So I'd like to welcome you once again to the third webinar. We've had two so far, and as you know, we've been covering topics such as demographics, etc., throughout the last couple of weeks. And so this one starts moving towards information literacy and technology. So what we're looking for is really addressing some of the issues and complications that may come up for both staff members and customers when it comes to using technology, and the importance of information literacy not only in our field but as an ongoing lifelong learning initiative, and being able to assist customers when they might not have all the background skills or the foundational skills necessary to effectively be able to wade through the sheer amount of information that's there. Joined with me today is Ricky Ong, who works with IT, and he has some background in teaching computer classes and working with public students in order to help them gain computer literacy skills. And so as we are starting today's workshop, I want to make sure that, just remember that microphones should be muted to prevent some background noise. And then additionally, if you do have questions, you can type them into the chat box. So today's overall objectives are first just reviewing the information about internet access in New York City, looking at the importance of multimodal literacies, which includes many foundational pieces of information literacy, and additionally providing ideas to support customers in their own learning experience, and looking at this from the perspective of the staff member, assisting the customer throughout their time that they're either in the library, and actually helping the customer build those skills to ensure that they are able to navigate online. So just a brief definition of informational literacy, right? We think about what information is, and we think about how information is obtained. And this has changed over the course of the last 20 to 30 years from being predominantly in print to really increasing to online and digital access. And with this comes the idea of multimodal literacy. Multimodal literacy has to do with using different types and different forms of gaining and receiving information, and as well as sharing that information. This can be through picture, through audio, through video, through text, and any other form that we can make interactive and allow the learner or the user to increasingly understand the content through multiple formats. And so when we think about information literacy, it continues to expand because no longer are we using singular formats such as books as the predominant form of learning or information. We're using more items on top of the text that help enhance the understanding behind it. And according to ALA's definition of information literacy, it really determines and describes this form of literacy as a set of abilities that require to, one, recognize when the information is needed, and then secondly, to have the ability to locate, to evaluate, and use effectively the needed information. And with this, much of this occurs online. And so when we think about what information literacy is and how it impacts the services that we have here at Queens Library, it is important to understand how and when we're able to support our customers. It is challenging sometimes when you do have a lot of customers who come for information. And throughout this workshop, we'll share ideas with you about how to support the customer in a shorter period of time to get at least a little bit more structured foundational skills that will allow them to be able to navigate through the information that they are presented with, and additionally the information that is generally available out there, which tends to be a lot, especially nowadays.
Hello everyone. So online resources such as online news, online referrals to get information about education, employment, social services, etc. are easily accessible but are changing frequently. They might change every day, almost every day. So the amount of information available can be overwhelming for customers. We have some questions to ask and to answer. The first question, how to search for information online? Well, first, when we get a customer, we have customer coming and then they ask for, let's say, this is from my experience last week. So when I tried to fix a computer and then a customer came to me and then asked, how do I get information on how to cook steamed chicken, and then what are the ingredients? So, well, I tried to help him by showing him, okay, you can search this information using a search engine called Google, and then you go to this website, you type the keyword, right? Because he wants to know the information about steamed chicken, so type steamed chicken, and then he wants to know the ingredients, so type the ingredients, and then we get the result, the list of results, and then we go through, let's say the top one. Is this the information that you are looking for? Usually the top in the list is the information that we can show, that it might be accurate but not necessarily accurate.
And additionally, we want to make sure that when we are providing this information, that we are considering multiple questions and thinking about how do we help the customer to understand when the information that they're looking for is not just accurate, as Ricky mentioned, but is also relevant to what their situation is. And with so much information that exists out there, it does mean that there are times when we will run into a case where maybe the first 2 or 3 results of Google do not quite match the situation that the customer is having. And at that point, we really want to address whether or not this is exactly what we need. So that requires us understanding characteristics of our neighborhoods, which we discovered in the demographics workshops that we've done online, and in the last website, or sorry, in the last webinar. And what we're looking at is thinking about how understanding these demographics will help us to understand the indirect needs or even the foundational needs of customers. A good example could be that a parent comes in and they talk about how they can find a service to help their children in school. Especially if this child is in middle school, even high school, a good question would be, well, what level is this child in? Do they have internet access at home? Is it an issue with behavior, or is it an issue with actual academics? And many times that'll help us pinpoint what resources we can send this family to. If it's an issue with academics particularly, and you realize and learn that they have no internet access at home, those two might correlate. And that might be a definite point that we can say that if you do you have access to the internet, and is this preventing the child or your child from being able to adequately do their work? And these are the ways that we can find out, either using the statistics that we have or even asking more of those questions. So to refer to those statistics, if you've gone through Workshop 3, you've seen this chart already. It is the internet access in New York City. And what we see is that there are disparities between native-born and foreign-born populations. Overall, the average of the population that does not have internet access at home is about 17 to 18%. However, when we break it down by foreign-born and native-born, there are a few counties or boroughs that really stand out, particularly Manhattan and Queens, where the disparity between those who are native-born and foreign-born are much larger than the other three boroughs. When we are thinking about what services that we provide at Queens Library and what services that we can provide or enhance at Queens Library, these are the considerations that we want to make. One, we must address first not just the digital divide in information and background, but whether this person actually has access to the internet to close this gap in the digital divide. And this may cause us to have to inquire about more information, figure things out, and support the customer in different ways. Additionally, when they did this study, this was the first year, 2013, that they were actually able to capture, based on their survey, this data. And so this isn't available to us before 2013. One of the big pieces is that all the boroughs have higher rates of foreign-born who do not have internet access than native-born, with the exception of Brooklyn. These are self-reported, so the data can fall within the margin of error, so it might be a little bit higher, it might be a little bit lower. But it's something to consider that we might have customers, since Queens Library doesn't serve only Queens residents, it serves residents throughout the city, that we might encounter customers or situations where the native-born customers might even have more challenges and issues accessing the internet than our foreign-born customers. And this is something to keep in mind. But predominantly, Queens has a disparity between foreign-born and native-born. Manhattan has the largest one. This breaks down internet access in Queens by community district. So as you learned in Workshop 2 and 3, community districts are pretty much clusters of neighborhoods, but they're not perfectly fit because our neighborhoods don't match the community district line. So these are the estimates based on reports in each community district. And you will see that there are actually quite a few community districts where they are at around 20 or higher % of foreign-born with no access to internet at home. One of the most startling ones is if you look at Community District 14 at the very bottom, Far Rockaway, Breezy Point, and Broad Channel, over almost 35% of the foreign-born residents there do not have internet access. Now, this can be because of various external issues that have occurred, such as Hurricane Sandy. This was after Hurricane Sandy when this data was taken, so the infrastructure of that area may have still been in repair. However, that is something that both the library, the state, and even the city have all taken action to address. In the other areas, you see that there are quite a few other neighborhoods, such as Ridgewood, Glendale, Flushing, Jackson Heights, these areas that have very high populations of immigrants are also seeing high rates of foreign born with no internet access. And the repercussions of this bleed into not just being able to go online and check Facebook or communication, but actually can bleed into educational prospects and accessing this information that now these customers come to the library for. So the library has set up multiple initiatives to ensure that we're able to meet the demands of these customers. And so the big question that we want to think about is, what do we as staff members need to know to support these customers online? And I think there's an even better way to say this, which is, what can we do better as staff members? Because we already do a very, very good job to try to support customers. But what can we do? What can we do better, both on an organizational level and on an individual level? And then also, what more can we do to support our customers? And this is really where we want to consider what current programs and services we're offering, and then looking at what programs and services we want to add in the future. The first part of this is finding out that customers need. So as I go back to the beginning, a customer many times will come in and say, I need help with this, or I need access to this. But there might be a few underlying issues that are there. Or you might need more information in order to adequately gather enough detail to direct the customer to the right website or direct them to the right information. So it's important that we continue to think about how our customers are coming up to us and then what they're really asking. Additionally, we want to look at making sure that we are keeping up to date with current information. So as Ricky mentioned earlier, this could be books, news, the library's website, the policies that we have at the library. We need to understand what is happening around us that can impact our customers. We don't want to be in a bubble or a silo when this is occurring, because our customers are the people that come to us each day. Additionally, our customers are the people who need to come to us each day and don't, whether or not they recognize us as a resource or whether or not they don't realize that we might have that resource here. And if we don't, we need to be adequately supportive and also equipped to be able to then help the customer find that information. One of the best ways to do this is to build a list of contact information to make sure that as you've gone through the content, you have a list ready to go. And then in Workshop 5, you'll see that there's a method called CRAAP method, C-R-A-A-P. And this is an evaluation tool that both you and customers can utilize to determine whether or not a resource is effective. And by using this method, you're looking for current information, relevant information, making sure it is accessible and applicable, and making sure that this is information that is easy to use and easy to navigate. We all work with different customers, and each customer comes with varying levels of comfort with technology, knowledge about the technology, and understanding what are the needs that they have in the background. The ideal customer would come and would just ask whether or not this is a correct or useful website and not really come in with nothing. But we do need to start asking those questions even more so to really drive the customer towards what they really need. And the last part is really supporting and providing friendly customer service, especially after a long day or when you have repeat customers. We want to make sure that we are providing good customer service. And that means that we have to be on our P's and Q's all the time. We have to be on our toes. We have to be aware of what's happening not only inside of the library, but outside the library. And you'll be able to build up this rapport as a go-to person for helping customers online.
So what can we do in the libraries to quickly and effectively teach information literacy skills to our customers? So we can provide effective and plenty of resources and services such as books about computer literacy or information literacy, not just textbook but books with visuals. Like let's say they want to know how do I do this, like the steps. They like to see the visuals, the graphic pictures. Also, list of websites. What websites that are good for them to visit to find information about education, employment, social services. Also, we can request to IT. Let's say, oh, our public computers have this software, or can we have icons or shortcuts to be able to show on desktop in our public computers, so our customers do not have to type long URL, long web address, because when they type something, they might type differently than uh, what they know or what we tell them. So it's good to have a list of websites and then icons or shortcuts on desktops. Also, with communicating and working with a PSD, Adult Learner Program, Job and Business Academy, New Immigrants Program, we can provide computer classes, job prep classes, how to write a resume, cover letter, how to search for employment, a job online, financial classes or social services classes, and also other classes in other languages other than English.
And when we think about all of these programs and services that we have together, a good point was brought up, and I'll read it out loud. Quoted, "One issue I've encountered is that customers are not always forthcoming with what they actually need. They may not know, and it can be difficult to get it out of them." And yes, that is an excellent point. When we are working with customers, there might be certain levels of discomfort. One, with just working with others in the public. Sometimes customers may not be comfortable with established organizations or organizations they might connect with the government. And this is something that might be a cultural background, a personal experience. These are things that we're going to encounter. And you can't force a customer to give you more information. But there are certain ideas that we can bring out of the interaction. If a customer is very uncomfortable with providing information, there might be something a little bit deeper that you as a staff member might not be able to address. But if you realize and the customer is willing to talk to somebody more, like one of the case managers, that might be a tool or a person that you can use to get the customer to go into more detail about what their situation is to get them better resources. Another participant brought up that, yes, that's what the reference interviews are for. And that's exactly what they're established for, to see and ask detailed questions or questions that are pointed enough in order to get out information from the customer. For those who don't participate or conduct regular reference interviews as maybe the librarians do, it is important that we do still do some type of interview to ask them about their needs. If a customer is going for job searches and they look very lost and confused, it might be worthwhile to ask them, do they need any assistance? Have they talked to somebody about it? And that's a point where you can not only work with other internal programs, but that might be you, like if you're working at the computer lab, you can refer them then to a librarian or somebody in the Job and Business Academy that would be able to further help them. So although all of us do not conduct formal reference interviews, we all in a way have to conduct some type of questioning to get the customer to where they're going. And that doesn't mean that it's as in depth or as long as a reference interview, but it does mean that you ask you inquire enough to make sure the customer is getting their needs met. And I say this a lot in my in-person trainings, where you can refer somebody to Google, and Google will give you thousands of results. But the reason that customers come to us is because that they have the expectation that we're going to give them the best and most accurate result. And even if we can't provide the direct answer off the top of our head, it is up to us to be effective enough and understand the technology enough to know what resources are available for them or where to go. And this really leads to asking other questions, right? So one, we want to think about, have you as a staff member vetted these websites? There are many websites that are available. There are websites that you have access to, even through the trainings online, that there's just lists and lists of categorized sites. But until you as a staff member go through them, or just a few of them and not all of them, because there are a lot unless you want to, but as you go through these sites, you'll realize that there are some of them that are more user-friendly, some of them that might require a lot more English proficiency skills than maybe your customers have. And it's important that we are considering these things even when we are using informed referrals. And if you're assisting a customer, for instance, if they are jumping on a computer and they don't know what sites to go to, think about your own experience with those sites. Many of us have become very, very accustomed to using the computer, and those of us that haven't, we're still using them enough to understand some of the basics. But you might have customers that have little to no experience using the computer or working online. And in those cases, what are the steps that we're taking to help them out? Another question we want to consider are, what specific websites that you as a representative of the library, you as somebody who holds information, what sites do you find to be relevant and reliable for yourself? And additionally, do those translate to relevant and reliable material for our customers? Some things that I might find reliable may not be reliable to somebody else, and that's okay. What we're looking for is building a network and a connection among ourselves so that if I don't understand a site, we can reach out to somebody who does. And then finally, we want to look at, if you have referred or helped customers navigate different websites, have they successfully used those websites? And that's really the biggest key, is not the fact that we just gave them the information, but they actually utilized it and it worked for them. And if we have instances where sites are not working for either particular populations or certain people from different backgrounds, then we want to know, well, if a customer with a similar background, a similar question comes to us, is that tool effective for us to refer them to? So these are some of the things that you can use some base assumptions based off of understanding of the customer base that you have. And that really ties back into our cultural competence, that ties back into our demographics. If you work in a community that tends to be less responsive to technology, or even be a little bit more afraid of technology, what are the ways that you can assist them to help them to get this information? And that really leads us to our final point, which is, we want our customers to engage in independent learning. However, scaffolding is still needed to support them as they learn to self-navigate. And what this really means is, when you're building a foundation and when you're building a building, sometimes you have to have certain things to hold up the walls in order to get the building to a place where it can stand by itself. Many customers do not come with this foundational piece, or the foundation hasn't really fully been developed. And so as customer oriented staff members, we really need to think about in what ways are we supporting and teaching the customers certain aspects of information literacy and online access. Yes, you're going to have repeat customers, and I think that's something that all of us have seen in our tenure at the library or in any other position, especially with public work, is that you have repeat customers who come to you often. And when that happens, this is an ample opportunity for us to begin to engage that customer in a little bit more learning and a little bit more work for themselves. This means that instead of moving the mouse for them, you get them to start moving the mouse. And they might be a little bit upset at the beginning, but what you're doing is starting to structure this foundation of, you can do this, I know you can do it, I believe that you can do it, and now let's practice it, and let's practice it together. All of us don't have the time to do that all the time, but even those small things, such as if a customer comes to you and you have a ready-made list of resources for the customer, if they come with a question, you can say, you know what, we have a computer available, here's the website, pop on the computer quickly, see if you can get to it, if you need assistance, let me know. That's another way to start driving them to be scaffolded. So you're providing the direct website, you're allowing them to do it themselves, but you're still there as a support. So it kind of takes on the role of not only providing information, but also helping the learner and the customer to be able to then navigate the information in the future, especially when they don't have access to the library during our closing hours, for instance, or if they're not able to come to the library for whatever reason, they can still do this work at home or at another location. So we really want to think about providing good resources, once again, vetted resources, in order to support the customer. Also providing workshops. We have an excellent team of trainers and teachers throughout the entire system. Many of you may have even taken up the responsibility to begin training and teaching on computer literacy and information literacy. And those are excellent venues to really not only inspire the customers to do more, but be able to then build connections among all of us to be able to guide the customers. We don't want to end up kind of siloed out, where we as trainers and librarians and customer service specialists and managers, that we feel we're alone guiding or trying to scaffold this, or we're alone in the support. Really, we're all together. We're networked very heavily, and it is our hope that through this, we're able to continue guiding the customer to be able to come to us when they do have a question and still be able to access the information without us if they need to. This means that we might lead workshops on using online databases. Some schools don't have access to online databases, and that's a point of research that is important for all of us as we've gone through colleges, and then even the students that are coming up today. And by teaching those skills and teaching them shortly how to access a database, and maybe having a list of which ones are the most important ones that are geared towards students, that would be an excellent time. And that takes about 10 minutes to say, here's where you log in, this is where our databases are, these are what databases are, and then you can put in a few search terms to find some articles and you can skim through them. That, and you reinforce that a little bit over time, and that allows them to learn. You also have online access to the tutorials that are available on the Queens Library website. There are tutorials to things such as how to use Microsoft Word basics, what is Facebook for, and a lot of these other basics and links to typing courses and classes. Those are all resources that you can give the customers, especially if you see them at a time where they might not even come to you, but they're sitting at the computers right across from you and they might be having trouble typing. A great time would be to step up and say, hey, I noticed that you're having a few issues typing, or would you be interested in typing classes? And then that's a great point to help them get to that next level. We're looking at what are the indirect and direct needs that the customer has. And it is very important that we do address those, because not only does that reinforce that the library is supportive and is a place that the customer can come, but it shows that we're also being proactive and taking the initiative to ensure that we're meeting as many of the needs for the customer, or of the customer, excuse me, as possible at that one time.